Red Dead Redemption 2 is more than a Western video game. Released by Rockstar Games in 2018, it became one of the clearest examples of how cinematic storytelling, open-world design, and obsessive environmental detail could merge into one massive interactive experience. Set in 1899, the game looks backward at the dying days of the American frontier, but it also tells a deeply personal story about loyalty, violence, survival, and the cost of believing in a dream after that dream has already collapsed. As the third entry in the Red Dead series and a prequel to 2010's Red Dead Redemption, it had the difficult job of honoring an already beloved game while expanding its world, its themes, and its emotional weight. The story follows Arthur Morgan, a senior member of the Van der Linde gang. Arthur is not introduced as a traditional hero. He is an outlaw, an enforcer, and a man who has spent most of his life robbing, fighting, and surviving outside the law. But what makes him compelling is that the game slowly reveals the person behind the reputation. Arthur is loyal to Dutch Van der Linde, the gang's charismatic leader, and he believes, at least at first, that the gang is a kind of family. They steal to survive, but they also speak of freedom, independence, and escape from a society they see as corrupt and restrictive. The tragedy of Red Dead Redemption 2 is that the world no longer has room for people like them. The game is set during a period when the Wild West is fading and modern America is taking shape. Railroads, industrial towns, federal agents, organized police forces, and expanding cities are closing in on the open frontier. The Van der Linde gang keeps moving from camp to camp, always promising one final score that will fund their escape. But every escape plan leads to more pressure, more violence, and more betrayal. Rockstar uses this historical moment not just as scenery, but as the central force crushing the character's way of life. One of the game's biggest achievements is its open world. Instead of feeling like a map filled with icons, Red Dead Redemption 2 presents a fictionalized United States that feels deliberately alive. Snowy mountains, muddy towns, swamps, forests, plains, and growing industrial cities all carry a different atmosphere. The player can ride across huge stretches of land and encounter strangers, animals, lawmen, bandits, travelers, or small unscripted moments that make the world feel less like a backdrop and more like a place with its own rhythm. This attention to detail supports the story's themes, because the beauty of the world often contrasts with the violence of the people trying to control it. Gameplay is built around freedom, but that freedom is constantly shaped by consequence. Players can take part in shootouts, robberies, hunting, fishing, horseback riding, gambling, exploration, and conversations with non-player characters. The game can be played from either first-person or third-person perspective, giving players different ways to experience its world. But actions matter. Commit crimes, and the bounty system brings law enforcement and bounty hunters after Arthur. Treat people cruelly or honorably, and the honor system reflects that moral path. This does not turn the game into a simple good or evil meter. Instead, it reinforces the idea that Arthur is always being defined by the choices he makes, even inside a violent life. The honor system is especially important because it connects mechanics to character development. Arthur begins as a man who follows orders and accepts the gang's worldview. Over time, players see cracks in that worldview. Dutch becomes more reckless, the gang becomes more desperate, and Arthur is forced to confront whether loyalty is still noble when the leader he follows is losing his judgment. The player's choices can make Arthur colder and more selfish, or more reflective and compassionate. Either way, the system gives emotional weight to ordinary interactions, from helping a stranger on the road to deciding how violently to handle a confrontation. Red Dead Redemption 2 is also known for its extreme commitment to realism. Horses need care, weapons need maintenance, weather affects the mood of travel, and Arthur's appearance can change over time. Animations are slow, deliberate, and often highly detailed. Skinning an animal, looting a body, cooking food, or riding across long distances can feel almost ritualistic. For many players, this realism made the world more immersive than almost anything before it. For others, it sometimes made the game feel heavy or restrictive. That tension became one of the main criticisms. Rockstar prioritized atmosphere and believability so strongly that some players felt the controls and mission structure limited their freedom. Behind the scenes, the game was the result of an enormous development effort. Work began soon after the release of the previous Red Dead Redemption, and development lasted more than 8 years. Rockstar brought all of its studios together into one large production network, creating one of the most ambitious and expensive games ever made. The team drew influence from real historical locations rather than simply copying Western films or paintings. The goal was to build a world that felt grounded in the period, from architecture and clothing to social tensions and regional landscapes. Red Dead Redemption 2 was also Rockstar's first game built specifically for 8th-generation consoles, allowing it to push far beyond what had been possible on older hardware. The game's sound and music played a major role in its identity. The original score was composed by Woody Jackson, who had also worked on the earlier Red Dead Redemption, while vocal tracks were produced by Daniel Lanois. The music does not simply sit behind the action. It often rises gently during travel, swells during desperate escapes, or falls into silence during moments of grief and reflection. This careful use of sound helps the game feel cinematic without turning it into a passive movie. It gives emotional shape to long rides, tense standoffs, and quiet camp moments, making the player's journey through the world feel personal and memorable. However, the scale of the project also led to controversy. Reports around release described intense crunch conditions, including claims of 100-hour workweeks and concerns over mandatory or unpaid overtime. This sparked a broader conversation in the gaming industry about the human cost of blockbuster development. Red Dead Redemption 2 was praised for its craftsmanship, but the discussion around its production raised an uncomfortable question: how much should audiences celebrate a massive artistic achievement if it may have required unsustainable labor practices? The controversy did not erase the game's accomplishments, but it became an important part of its history and the industry's ongoing debate about work culture. When Red Dead Redemption 2 launched on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One in October 2018, it was a commercial phenomenon. It generated $725 million in its opening weekend, making it one of the biggest entertainment launches ever. Within 8 days, it had already exceeded the lifetime sales of the original Red Dead Redemption. Later, it arrived on Windows and Stadia in November 2019, bringing the game to more players and allowing the PC version to showcase even greater visual detail. The sales numbers proved that a slow, story-heavy Western could still dominate a market often associated with faster, more instantly accessible experiences. Critically, Red Dead Redemption 2 became one of the defining games of its generation. Reviewers praised its story, characters, performances, world design, graphics, music, and extraordinary level of detail. It won more than 175 Game of the Year awards and is widely considered one of the greatest video games ever made. Red Dead Online added a multiplayer mode where up to 32 players could take part in cooperative and competitive activities, extending the world beyond Arthur's story. But the heart of the game's legacy remains its single-player journey, a portrait of an outlaw. Watching his world disappear, and a reminder that even in a violent life, redemption can begin with recognizing the truth. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.